Hey, welcome to the Sequential Artists Workshop Pro Calls. Every week we ask another creator, another graphic novelist to come sit down with us and tell us where they came from, what were the first things they made, what did they make recently, how did they do it, what are they thinking about now, how are they going to move forward, how do they keep going, all those things, career things, art things, feeling things, creative things. Every month it's a new creator, new challenges, new stories. Come check it out. Come sit down with us. You can sit down live for some of these calls by being a member of our groups. You can find us at learn.sawcomics.org. Come check it out. Come be a graphic novelist with us. Come join us on the socials. Sometimes it's Comics Workshop, sometimes it's Saw Comics. Either way, come check us out and welcome. Craig, it's so nice to see you. How this usually works, Craig, and hopefully you can do this off the cuff, is like we love to hear stories about how you got started.
Okay.
And then we love to hear, treat us like we don't know your work. That helps. Tell us about your first little books, your first big books, your next big book, and then you can tell us about the newest book and even whether or not you're giving up comics or not.
All right. Cool. The story there, Tom's not telling. Let's see. I guess I'm just gonna start from the beginning then with Bit by Chunky Rice. I mean,
Okay.
even before that was mini comics, and that's how Tom and I first met. Maybe that's the story that we're not telling. I went to community college for 1 year. Uh, And that was good and fine. I was working full time at a newspaper. I think my full time job was more my life than school was at that point.
Hmm.
And I ended up going to art school for 1 semester. That's all I could financially manage. And that was around 1995, 96. And yeah, I only afforded 1 semester. But during that time, I was making mini comics. And this is when I first connected with Tom via John Porcelino and King Cat and Spit and Half Distribution. Oh, whoa. There's this crazy ant on their table that is carrying a chunk of something that's as big as it is. Wow. Um, so I do have something related to mini comics. I didn't think of digging up mini comics, but I brought original pages of Goodbye Chunky Rice.
Oh gosh. Oh
And
my gosh.
and so Goodbye Chunky Rice was my first book. It came out in 1999 when I was 23 with a small publisher called Top Shelf. But before it was a book, it was a mini comic. And I think I grabbed the right one. I think this has, yeah, so this has some of the mini comic pages, which are very different
Oh,
from the print version. I was drawing really massive back
you
then.
were. Wow, look at that.
How do I do that? Okay, there I am. So,
Oh,
and
you've got an
also,
iPad that self-focuses, right?
yeah, I guess it's the new, I had to get a new Mac and I guess it does
Oh,
that. So,
right.
but it's a little confused by that, isn't it? Oh, it wants to focus on my face.
It does. Yeah.
So you can see how verbose Chunky Rice was in the mini comic version. And I think I have an example of how so basically I was working on this mini comic when I moved to Portland, Oregon. It was about missing Wisconsin and my friends there. Oh yeah, there's some really weird character designs in the mini comic. This is like an early version of
Oh,
Captain Chuck.
wow.
Is it focused on him if I don't look at the
Yeah,
screen?
it looks great. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know how to turn off that new feature. So I was hoping I had maybe a side by side here of how I redrew stuff. But basically, I was working on this mini comic. I met this bartender named Brett Warnock, who was running a self-publishing operation out of his basement called Primal Groove Press. And he published like a comics anthology called Top Shelf. That's the origins of Top Shelf. So I showed this like bartender guy what I was working on, and he's like, "Oh, I was working on autobio work back then too." But he looked at the autobio stuff and he said, "Well, this stuff is too personal. Nobody wants to read this." But that little turtle character, if you do a whole book of that, I'll publish it. So then I had like maybe 20 pages of Goodbye Chunky Rice that I decided or chose to flesh out into like a 130 page book.
Can you stop there? So was the 20 pages a finite story?
No, it was just kind of that was the thing. The only real editorial direction I feel like I received was that they looked at what so very shortly after that, Top Shelf kind of birthed. Chris Orr and Chris Staros joined the company. And then Chris Staros said, well, this mini comic doesn't have a beginning or end. It's just like somewhere in the middle.
Hmm.
We need to see a version that has a beginning and end. So then I sat down and thumbnailed the whole story. If I think I did it like in a week, the thumbnails, and then spent the next year drawing the final art.
This is great. We're actually at that point in our program where we're talking exactly about this. It's like pick something that's alive for you in the middle and just draw it, and that will give you some of what you need to go on afterwards. And especially if somebody's from the outside is saying, "Oh, you need a beginning and an end," that works too.
Yeah, yeah, I do think it's a great start
So,
with the action.
did you did was there an actual Chunky Rice mini comic? Did that ever get printed?
No, because I was just sort of back then I just made things up as I went along, so it was just something I was kind of fiddling with, and Brett saw that on my drawing table,
So
and
you redrew all those pages.
I did, yeah, yeah. I was hoping I had a side by side, but I don't think I have it in this binder side by sides because there are some very overt pages where I took the same scene and redrew it, but cleaned up my style. No, I don't have it in here. So back then I was drawing quite large too. I think these are, what is this, 14 by 17?
I recognize that page. That's a final from the book.
Yes, so this is the book.
I teach that page when I teach inset panels. It's such a beautiful inset panel because
Oh,
it's in the middle of all this like this chaos, but it like focuses on that moment of that emotional moment of just seeing something just really well and just a perfect inset panel. That's all.
oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'll try and talk less. What so
I like it. I like the prompts. I like the questions. So if
okay.
anybody else has questions too, I'm game anytime.
Um, so it took you a week to thumbnail the rest of it, and then a year to draw the rest.
Yeah, about a year to draw it. And I was working full time as a graphic designer, not through about half of the book. I was working, it was my last real job. I was working at Dark Horse Comics. And so all day long, I'd be on my computer at work, and then every evening and every weekend, I would be drawing Chunky Rice. I had no life at that early 20s, just working all the time, and actually did develop at that time crippling tendonitis, which probably you've talked about that in your workshops too.
No, no, we avoid it.
Oh,
Did you?
really? Well,
Do
I
you
mean,
still?
just, there's that book, I forget who wrote it, Draw Stronger.
Yeah, Creota Wilberg. Yeah,
Thank you, thank you.
yeah.
So yeah, just like it's an important thing to learn in your cartooning career is how to take care of your body and take some breaks.
So Chunky Rice came out a year and a half. So wait. Actually, I want to go back because this is another great professional lesson, which is show your work to bartenders, show it to anybody, right? Were you just like at the bar and you're like, here's my comic?
No, so I knew Brett Warnock through Spit and a Half,
Oh,
through John Porcelino's
distribution.
distribution company. And that's how I made all my pen pals, which included Tom and people like Jennifer Daydreamer. And then Brett Warnock he had contacted me actually. He had found my stuff through the
Oh, okay.
distribution. And so I knew of him and I knew of this top shelf anthology, which like most anthologies was a very mixed bag. It had some really good, great stuff in it, some of my favorite cartoonists, and then it also had a lot of, it was an anthology. There was, so
Mixed bag.
he was just sort of in my Rolodex, Brett Warnock. So when I moved to Portland, I looked him up.
Okay. So it
And
wasn't a random bartender, which I have.
no, yeah, I wasn't
Right.
drinking back then. It was not expendable income to hang out at bars. So
Right. Okay. So Chunky Rice comes out from Top Shelf, and then what?
that came out in 1999. I
Uh-huh.
got that crazy ants on my computer now. Um, and uh, And yeah, it came out to a very, very modest indie comic success, as in like, I don't know, a couple thousand copies it sold. And so like I pretty much I'm are friends with everybody that was fans of the book at that time. Its fans were so rare. I would go to a convention or something, and if I were there all day, maybe, 5 or 10 minutes at the time with someone approaching me about the book.
Hmm.
So, and in a way, I think fondly of those days because it gave me time to go around the show and looking at other people's work. And, you know, I didn't have signing lines back then, but it was, it was just a very modestly noticed indie book.
So then what? You're still working at Dark Horse as a graphic
No,
designer?
no, no. I had already quit Dark Horse. So I quit Dark Horse because of the tendonitis,
Oh.
because it felt like it was threatening my drawing career. And a big part of that was still the days of using a
Mm.
mouse to do design work. So I took a couple of months off to recover my hand. And then I also had about a 6 month nest egg to try to make it as a freelance illustrator. And I did a lot of free illustrations. I did a lot of $50 illustrations. I was not getting by until right around the end of that 6 month spell. I landed a gig at Nickelodeon magazine, which like saved
Oh.
the careers of many cartoonists in the 90s and early 2000s. And that was Chris Duffy and Dave Roman were editors. And
Oh.
this is back in the day of print media, when there were still magazines for kids. And they paid really well. They paid like $750 for a page of comics, in 1997, 98.
Yeah.
So if I did a couple pages of comics with Nickelodeon a month, I had the rest of the month to work on my personal work.
Yeah. And you pulled out all the stops for those pages in Nickelodeon. You had so much fun. It was clear.
Yeah, I was working hard. So about half of my month was Nickelodeon, half of my
Uh-huh.
month was personal time, which is a great um, balance. And I had a low overhead. I mean, now I couldn't live off of $1,500 a month, but I could back then.
Yeah. So so when are you thinking, oh, I want to do another story. I want to do another.
Oh, right away.
Uh-huh.
Back then, there was no time wasted. I knew I was going to start on blankets as soon as Chunky. I already had blankets in my sketchbook before I started Chunky Rice, like the idea. Oh, and what I have with blankets is I have my thumbnails here today.
Oh.
Yeah, I preserved them all so I can show my writing process because I spent a year on these.
Oh my God.
So like, I would thumbnail, do a rough draft of the whole book, which I'm sure all you do that too, but um, and then revise this. Sorry, it's gonna keep focusing on my face.
A darn focus. I can't believe we can't change it.
There must be a way, but I just got this computer because my
If
other one.
anyone knows in the chat how to change that autofocus, I thought it was only an iPad thing, but if you're saying it's a Mac thing too, it's okay.
Okay, I'm looking for where that might be, but I'll
You're,
just try to wait.
yeah.
If I'm right next to it, it works. Yeah.
Hmm.
So these were the thumbnails, and actually they're very close. If I were able to put them side by side with the final pages. Uh, I kind of like this background over here though more. So yeah, that's good.
Definitely, definitely.
Um, so
Wow.
yeah, and then I spent a year on this, which included all the redraws and edits.
Wait,
It's
you
all,
spent a year on the thumbnails.
yeah, these are the thumbnails, a year in this, and this is how I wrote the book. I didn't write a script or anything. I wrote it as comics,
Hmm.
and I drew in ballpoint pen because that allowed me to not fuss. Yeah, I'm not penciling it, I'm just drawing it.
Did you have an outline?
Yeah, some sort of vague outline. Yeah, I would like, oh, so this is kind of a good example of these are later thumbnails in the book where I was adding some last scenes, and at that point I was like not even worrying about drawing.
Hmm.
Just had to do the breakdowns. Yeah, those are pretty quickly done. But in the beginning, I was making them fairly detailed so that other people could read them and offer insight. But yeah, so like in the morning, I would do about 10 pages of these a day. That was my what I had to get it done. So I would just do like some real scribbles and maybe a little outline in the morning. And then by the end of the day, make sure I'd drawn 10 of these pages.
So, but you mean 10, you do scribbles in the morning, like really tiny thumbnails or something, and turn them into these kinds of larger thumbnails later?
Yeah, in the
Uh-huh.
day, during the same
Hmm.
day. So
Hmm.
10 a day.
Did you have what kind of deadlines did you have at that point? Were they self-imposed? They come from the outside?
I think they were self-imposed. I didn't want to, you know, I'm not as there are some cartoonists like Anders Nilsson who will make like an entire day by day work calendar for an entire year. He'll know exactly what he's working on any given day a year ahead of time. I'm not that structured, but I think I knew I had to write it quickly to get to the drawing.
Uh-huh.
I have some of the final art too. And
And so we know that after Chunky Rice, Top Shelf said, yeah, we would like to publish whatever's next, I guess, right?
yeah, and I had a 3 book contract with them. They required all their cartoonists to have 3 book contracts. So
Hmm.
I was like, I wasn't offered any additional money. I was given $1,000 for 3 books total. So I knew that they were kind of legally obligated to publish whatever I made. So in my head, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do whatever I want then, you know. And it gave me some freedom to do a 500-page book because that wasn't a common thing back then. I mean, it was unheard of. So
Yeah, when that came out. So, okay, we'll talk about contracts and stuff later maybe. But yeah, show us final pages. How long did the book take you to finish?
I spent 1 year writing it, and let's think. Let's see. Well, the whole process was 4 years, so it was a little over like 2.5 years to draw it. I was much faster then. Yeah, now I accomplished nothing in 2.5 years, but the originals are smaller,
Oh, they are.
and I would do 2 final pages a day.
2 pages a day.
Yep, and that's the rhythm I think I required to get it done.
So it's
So
roughly a thousand days of drawing spread out over 2.5 years.
yeah, it was roughly like 300 pages a year
Oh,
I would draw roughly that, or 250 to 300. And I would pencil them in the morning and ink them in the afternoon.
wow. You're so structured about it. I didn't realize that.
I don't know. It was intuitive to me back then to have more the structure.
Hmm. Can we see a little more of those?
Yeah, yeah. In fact, like I'm like, I wish I could show them side by side with Chunky because Chunky's so much larger.
Yeah. Oh, there's Jesus. We recognize him.
All right. I know you wanted to see Jesus. Let me see if we can pull out a Chunky page just to show you the contrast in size. Well, let's see. These portfolios are great. I recommend them, but it's also a little bit of a hassle. That's a Chunky page, and that's a blankets page.
Yeah, much bigger.
Is it
Although
covering them, or is it what's it doing right now?
it's going all over the place. We
Okay,
get the idea, I think.
doesn't like drawings, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
oh yeah, I don't like that feature at all. I gotta figure it
we
out.
actually, Zeb figured out how to turn it off if you want. It'll take a moment, but to turn
Okay,
on center stage on a Mac bar, click the green camera icon in the menu bar. What the hell's the menu bar? Oh, that's the Apple menu, I guess, right? And select center stage to toggle it on or off. Oh no, that would be the top bar. If you're using Mac OS 13, you can access it through the control center by clicking on video effects. So it's definitely a Mac related thing. Are you catching any of this?
I'm not knowing where any of these things are. So
Yeah.
spend time. There's a menu that says what?
Well, maybe by your battery and stuff. Do you have a little camera icon near your battery icon and your
That's there. It
Wi-Fi
is. This is
icon?
it. Okay, camera icon. Got it.
What's that do?
Yeah, cool. So there is.
Center stage. Click
Turn
that
that
on.
off. Great.
Zeb,
Nice.
thank
Sorry about that.
you.
Thanks
Now,
to
now
who
we
knew
got you.
that? Who knew how to do that?
Zeb knew how to do that.
Thanks to Zeb. All right,
Oh,
well,
look at that. Now we go.
inside now. Oh yeah, now I can see stuff too.
Yeah.
So, it's like I'm doing the same amount of drawing a day. This
Oh
was
yeah, look at
1 page a day,
that.
2 pages a day. So,
Wow. So we do have some questions, which are good ones, I think. How do you edit a book like that and revise?
well, that's what I edited everything when it was in this state, the
Okay.
thumbnails.
Hmm.
So, I probably drew all of these pages twice
Okay.
just to like revise them, I do agree that like you kind of have to do a first draft to know what your book's even about, and then the second draft you're writing a story with the themes in mind.
That's a great advice. I want to write that down. You have to do a first draft to even know what the book's about. That's going to be really disappointing to some, but it's also liberating in some ways.
I see some
Um,
questions here, but
let's see what else we have. Do you always draw from page one to the final page?
well, I guess in the case of Chunky Rice, I did not. No, sometimes I just start with scenes that are obvious to me that I know already.
Hmm.
But yeah, I usually do try to cook up an opening. It's the ending I never know. I never know the ending.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, there's a
Uh,
lot of questions here. I get, how do I see them in a list rather than just they disappear? Okay, there we go.
I
Sorry, I'm
got
new to this.
um
Okay, should I go through some of these questions?
yeah, some are just like love that Space Invaders shirt and things like that.
Oh, oh wow. So this is it does pick.
Brandon's asking about Carnet de Voyage, which you could speak
I
about.
I have Carnet here. So so yeah, I'll jump ahead a little. Chunky Blankets, essentially it was 4 years time between Chunky Rice and Blankets. And then Blankets was it was the opposite of Chunky. It was a huge success. Um but I didn't necessarily feel like it was a success because I wasn't getting paid for at least a year. So it was a weird span. And during that span I went to Europe. Um I was traveling for 3.5 months. And during 2.5 of those months, I did Carnet de Voyage. I have one of those sketchbooks with me. So, like, the story of that book is like, initially, I just wanted to get away. I wanted to go on a walkabout spirit journey. And I was planning to be in France for 3 months. And then when my European publishers, and at that point, I did have European publishers, which is a maybe side story we'll have to talk about, and it relates to Tom. But when they caught wind I was going to be in Europe, they kind of started planning out this European book tour for me. And then I realized, like, wow, I'm not going to have any time on my own during this venture. So I carved out 3 weeks alone in Morocco. And that the intent of that was to start researching for Habibi. Um, but then I also thought, like, wow, if I'm gone and traveling for 3.5 months, I'm going to go crazy if I don't have something productive that I'm doing. So that's why I decided to do a travel diary. And I mentioned it to Top Shelf before I mentioned it to Brett before I left. And he's like, oh, yeah, yeah, we want to publish that. In fact, we'll publish it before you return from your trip.
Huh.
And so he's like, the first thing we need is a page count, a price, and a cover for a trip that hadn't happened. I did draw them a cover,
Oh.
but then I felt a ton of pressure because I'm like, wait, this was just supposed to be a fun thing I was going to do for myself, and now it's like it's an obligation. And and then they, based on the price and the page count, it was obligated to be 224 pages. So I knew I had 224 pages to fill in 2.5 months. Um, so yeah, roughly 100 pages a month of comics. And I just drew directly in my sketchbook.
100 pages a month. Wow.
Yeah, well, but they're sketch pages, so some of them are like just portraits like that.
Oh yeah.
So
Nothing to it.
that page I can do in an hour or less. And then these were some drawings from Morocco. They're drawn in like really cheap pens because I lost all my pens, so I bought pens in Morocco and they're really fading. So I scanned some of these the other day because I don't know how many more years before these disappear off the page because of the cheap pens I was using. I always use archival pens.
But they're not deteriorating right now. At least that doesn't look like it.
Oh, if you were on my side of things, you could see they're
Oh
like
yeah.
are very yellowish brown with little
Oh
blue
wow.
halos.
Hmm.
So
Gosh.
like a drawing like this is just drawing on the spot. The good thing about this project is I didn't have a camera of any sort, and so I couldn't use that as a crutch. So to make a drawing like that, I just have to sit and be really uncomfortable for a couple of hours making that drawing. And make portraits of people while they're looking at me.
Wow.
All of that I drew from just looking at it. I remember this was I would sometimes find nice places to draw though. This was I was sitting on a rooftop, so I was
Oh,
not getting run over here. And this one I found a shady tree, very similar to these trees, so I could hide from the sun for a little bit. Uh,
wow.
yeah, here's I guess here's somewhere I didn't I think I just collaged those later digitally. So I drew this and did the production in 2.5 months while traveling. I had like about 1 week between when I finished the book and it had to go to press, and we scanned them in France over the course of 1 week.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Here. So
Wow.
so that was we're gonna have a kitty visitor in a moment. My friend's cat is pretty cool, but loves, as all cats do, loves getting on top of art. So,
Linda's asking if you had permission to draw people. I'm guessing you didn't.
oh no, I definitely did.
You did? Even
Oh, I guess not if I'm on a
casuals?
roof, not if I'm on a rooftop looking down at people. No, I
Hmm.
didn't. But if I were drawing, like a portrait or something, yeah, always with permission.
Hmm.
Yeah. And most of the drawings I had to get permission because they would take a while. And this
Uh-huh.
one could discreetly, yeah. But if I'm drawing like a street where people are just moving past constantly, I would just like really quickly draw from a combination of observation and memory because they were just there for a moment and moving on.
Yeah. That's the thing I was never good at. So that was your third book for the to fulfill the contract.
You would think so, right?
I don't know. Is there a story here?
Yeah.
Want
And
to tell?
well, so then this cat is super cute. Let's see if you can get the cat.
Oh
Hi,
my gosh. Oh, look at that flat face.
cutie. Penny. Her name is Penny. Um, yeah, so right before I left for Europe, because I like now I kind of got rid of all my stuff and got rid of my apartment and was couch surfing for a week or two. And during that time, Top Shelf gave me a contract for Carnet that I signed just cause sort of absentmindedly. And then it was like a couple of weeks after leaving for tour that it dawned on me, and maybe I was telling a friend, and they're like, "Well, why did you sign another contract?" And I was like, "I don't know. They said they needed it for the book to publish it." And then I realized that they intended that to be just a side project, and that they still owed them a third book for free. So basically, for $1,000, they'd already gotten chunky rice and blankets, and they wanted Habibi also within that $1,000, all for. And then also, I wasn't getting paid. It was like a year into blankets release, and they owed me $80,000, which, as you can imagine, the most I ever made at that point in my life was 20,000 a year. So to like be owed $80,000 after a year, that's when I got an agent. So I don't know if we have the agent conversation now.
However much you're comfortable with, because definitely somebody was like, what about royalties? What kind of royalties did you get? And I guess that answer is I did and I didn't, so, or something.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was an okay royalty rate, whatever it was. It was like
Uh-huh.
8 to 10%,
Uh-huh.
but there was no structure for when they had to pay those royalties. So if they
Uh-huh.
wanted, they could go 20 years without paying the royalties. And they were always they always threatening, like Diamond Distribution, they were always threatening bankruptcy,
Bankers.
which
Yeah.
would mean that they were now obligated to pay their debts to their authors. So we were all really worried, like, well, they're not paying us, and they're always talking about bankruptcy. So if they go bankrupt, they're released from their obligations to pay us. And that's around the time when I got an agent, because I kind of knew, like, at that point, like, things were really messy contractually and financially. Like, oh, it was Joe Sacco who that recommended I get an agent.
So
And
people are definitely interested in the chat, for instance. What were your thoughts on working on these books, quote, for free? And I definitely want to know what your agent
oh,
told you and did for you.
well, I think everyone in indie comics was working for free back then. I mean, I'd be curious if anybody was getting any kind of, there weren't advances back then. I mean, you could tell me otherwise, Tom. I don't know if anybody was getting more than $1,000 for a book advance. I mean, but
Okay.
uh, but the fact that the book was selling and selling really well, I mean, it sold 30,000 within the first 3 months. And
Wow.
I wasn't getting, or maybe, no, I'm sorry, maybe that's exaggeration. By the end of that year, so that got had been like 6 months or so, but
How
I
many printings did it go through in that first year?
at least
Roughly.
three, at least
Three
three.
printings a year. Wow.
So
Zeb says, how did you know the sales numbers? Were they clear about that?
I knew I knew the print numbers because I was working pretty closely with the printer. So it's like, oh,
Mm.
we're gonna print another 10,000. Oh, we're gonna print another 10,000. I'm like, well, if we're printing 10,000 copies, what happened to those last 10,000, Or why, So once I got an agent, or I was able to get accounting from them, and that's when I learned the 80,000 number of what was due, 80,000 bucks.
And people aren't gonna be satisfied until they hear how that got resolved. Did you see that money ever
Um, yeah, I would have eventually saw it, yeah.
over the course of some years or something?
No, I think once I got the agent, things started to get a little
Oh,
bit more lined up. That's
I
one of the
mean,
reasons I was able to make Habibi, because I finally was getting paid for the first time in my career. So once I
okay.
started getting paid, then I stopped doing freelance illustration and other work.
So you got paid for wait. But you did Carnet accidentally as a fourth book. So tell
Yeah.
us now what so you're finished with blankets, you're
Oh,
finished
yeah.
with Carnet, and you're like, I've been wanting to do this book called Habibi. Now
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, and all the New York publishers were interested in comics by that point. So I specifically I'd been contacted by Pantheon to do something, and that was my dream publisher at the time. It was Anjali Singh who brought Persepolis to
Mhm.
Pantheon, and David B's Epileptic. So she was like the
Oh,
powerhouse
right.
director or editor there,
Uh-huh.
especially bringing in imports from France. She was fluent in French too. And she reached out to me and we really bonded. I was really happy, to connect with her. So it was pretty much a given, like, oh, Pantheon wants to publish you, and then it's like, well, why would I do a free version for Top Shelf, a free Habibi? So
But were they going to stick to this weird contract where you supposedly owed them a third book?
they did give us they had like, what was the deal? There was a bunch of weird things going on then. I mean, it's too long of it's a
Yeah,
rotary list of things that I'd have to say, like, because there was weird Hollywood dealings that were not designed to work in my favor. Basically, Top Shelf owned all the entertainment rights for their creators, so they could sell the project and you would not have any choice or control of it. So that stuff was going on. I had to get like legal people involved at the
all
time.
right. We'll let this one
It's just it goes on and on. But yeah,
stay
basically,
unresolved. Yeah.
with Carnet. I mean, it just via the agent. I think part of the agent is they had a very strong legal department at the agency. When you get an agent, more than half of what you're paying for, because you have to pay 15% of all your income to your agent, but half of what you're paying for is just like the legal department and the access to that. Someone to, defend the creator's rights against publishers. Because all publishers are exploitative. Like, I don't think I've encountered a good one yet.
Okay. We'll save that for the Q&A at the end. I want to find out. So how did Habibi happen?
Yeah,
What
it was
process?
already kind of dreaming of that project, and then it was even better when made the connection with Pantheon, and Anjali Singh was the editor there. She was like the perfect person to be the editor on that project, because she was born in India, and so a lot of the reference was coming from India and Pakistan. Um, But I did do like the classic, because this is what agents like to do. I did the classic sort of like go to New York and have a bidding war with different publishers. So First Second was getting started. Houghton Mifflin was doing comics then. I talked to DC Comics of all places, and then the agent leveraged that to have a bidding war for the advance, which was not my like that wasn't like something I was comfortable with. I'm like, well, I like Pantheon. I'm happy to go with them. But he's like, no, no, no. We're gonna make the advance go higher by, you know,
Uh-huh.
putting these publishers against each other. And then it's like an auction. And that's what
What
they do.
what year is this?
2004,
Okay.
same year that Carnet de Voyage came out.
Okay. All right, so you took some sort of whopping deal at Pantheon, and same process. It takes you a long time to thumbnail, and you thumbnail full.
Yeah, it took me twice as long to make the book. So in a way, it was not uh, I was not any faster when I got to focus on graphic novels full time. In some ways, I was faster when I was working on illustration work and all that other stuff, like um, because it was nice when the book was not my full time job. It was just my labor of love side thing,
Hmm.
you know. So there is something great and pure about that labor of love phase of making comics. And actually, Habibi is the only book that I took. Well, no, I took an advance for Space Dumplings too, but the only two books that I got like a big advance for ahead of time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Um, okay, so I don't remember how many pages Habibi is. It's 600 and something, right?
666.
Oh, I forgot. And that
Yeah,
was on purpose, right?
yeah. My brain was so like I was like I want to hit the exact 666 number.
I was just talking about how I did a book that had to be 44 pages, but like 666 is so different. So, but okay, so how long did it take to thumbnail and how long did it take to draw?
2 years to thumbnail that, but there was obviously a lot of research involved, which
Hmm.
Blankets was just sort of my own coming from my own memory. Habibi was very research centric and much more reliant on my, my readers too, my first readers.
Hmm.
So it took 2 years, and even then, I didn't know how to end the book, but I just had been fussing with the thumbnails for so long, full time for 2 years, that I realized I had to stop or start drawing final art.
Well, that's actually a question that's come up a couple times in the chat. It's because they were pretty surprised by you saying you didn't know the ending of some of your books. So how do you do that?
I don't know the endings with any of my books.
It's okay. When does it come? Does it come
Um,
in the thumbnails?
no, I never
Oh.
figured it.
So
So
you
like,
thumbnail like 98% of it or something, and then
well, I think I've come up with endings, but they're not ones I'm happy with.
uh-huh.
So I think Blankets had an ending that was really terrible. And then I drew that book over 2 or 3 years. And once I got to the ending, is actually had to live those experiences in real life before I could write the endings. The ending happened in real time.
Mm-hmm.
And with Habibi, when I got to the end, so I thumbnailed for 2 years, and then I drew final art for 4 years. And probably for like 3 of those years, I was working on the first two acts of the book. And then when I got
Hmm.
to the final three chapters, I didn't know what to do. So I stopped drawing and all I did was write and thumbnail for another 3 months before I could get back to drawing.
I, I love the ending of that book, so I'm really
Thank you. Yeah,
grateful for
I wrestled with it a lot. That's when I lost my hair, is during that 3 months. I
that.
had pretty much normal hair pattern, like until after those 3 months when I was really stressing. I felt like I put a lot of pressure on myself for that project because it was, Blankets was successful. So there was that sophomore effort sort of pressure. And so I was really stressing Habibi and really wanting to put everything into it. I have some
So
pictures here too.
you have people reading your books, not just for like with Habibi and it being nonfiction and all that stuff, but do you have people reading it just for, is this working? How's this ending? Do you have people helping you with that?
Yeah. I always have like first readers that are generally
Uh-huh.
friends, people close to me who like seeing the process. So both Blankets and Habibi had that. In the case of Habibi, I also had like six readers that were Muslim Arabic readers. And so, I mean, even now it seems more obvious to have those,
Hmm.
cultural consultants. But then it was just like, I knew that I was writing about, well, there was Arabic language in the book, and I didn't read or speak Arabic. And then there was like Quranical references, so I wanted to run those by Muslims, to know if it was appropriate, if I could get away with it.
Hmm. Um, okay, so that comes out in 2011,
Yeah, 2011, September 11th, 2011 was the release day.
and
And
you're like,
that was a little strategic. I'm like, I want it to be 666 pages and I want it to come out 10 years after 9/11.
oh my gosh.
I was like crazy person at the time, so
Wow. Okay. Um, it's such a beautiful book. I love that book. Okay, and then you're like, I want to tell kids, I want to do a kids book.
Oh, let me see. I think I have some Habibi here too.
Oh yeah.
So Habibi, I generally drew. This is most of the book is drawn 11 by 14, this size,
Hmm.
and then maybe 20% of the book is like kind of splash pages that are drawn larger.
Wow.
Uh,
Oh, God.
let's see. Yeah, here's more of just the smaller 11 by 14, which is the bulk of the book.
Oh God, that whole junk in the river scene. Wow. Gosh. Oh,
Yeah, I kind of went to town on the detail. And then yeah, like all of these, like all the ornamental patterns too are drawn with a brush.
wow.
And there's calligraphy on that one too. I guess that's why these are together in this folder.
Phew, what a book.
One thing I should show too while we're talking about it is like I always write notes on the back of my pages. Usually there's a diary too. Oh, this one's pretty small actually.
Whoa.
So every one of my pages has this stuff on it.
What?
Sometimes it takes up the whole page.
Really?
Yeah. I was hoping that this one would tell me what it's saying. Okay. Yeah, so just I was keeping the notes too on what this text means.
Oh.
This says, and if you count the blessings of Allah, never will you be able to count them.
Uh-huh.
It's from the 14th surah of the Quran, 1434. So yeah, I definitely keep a lot of notes. Ginseng Roots has the most probably of all of my books. Oh, let me see what's on this other one. It's another crazy person thing to do is to keep a diary on the backs of my pages.
That is really something. Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I mean, and it's all my personal life, so that makes it weirder.
God.
But the reason I put my personal life is, yeah, I mean, because otherwise my life is just slipping away drawing all these pages in my studio, and I want to remind myself that there's other things in life. Also, a lot of sometimes there's so many distractions. I'm amazed I even get a page done. So that's what I was writing about.
Wow. I had no idea.
I'm trying seeing if there's anything appropriate I can read on here.
Is it like grocery lists and I went to the doctor and
Uh, well, I mean, I had house guests, so I was hosting house guests at the time. Um, we were definitely drinking and partying a lot. It looks like we went to see the Crumb exhibit, the Genesis exhibit at the Portland Art Museum. I was reading The Master Margarita by Bulgakov. That was the book I was obsessed with. But it was also part of our book club. Um, oh, and apparently only myself and my girlfriend and Laura Allred liked Master and Margarita. Everyone else in the book club hated it. It's a masterpiece, obviously. Um, oh, and then I was trying to judge applicants for the ACA residency in Florida, which is Atlantic Center for the Arts. They do artistic residencies, and they did graphic novels for the first time that year in 2010. So I was writing about some of my decisions and how to pick my from the applicants.
all of that on that one page.
Yeah.
Busy
So like
day in addition
all
to
of that,
drawing.
yeah, one day. So life is busy, so it's just like I wanted to keep a track of all that.
Oh my gosh.
Let's see if there's any other goodies here.
Now,
Oh yeah, yeah. Here's a goodie. Here's an obsessive redrawing. This bigger version here was the first version of the page I drew,
oh yeah.
and then I drew it again 3 years later, slightly smaller.
Uh-huh. Now it's not
They're not
significantly different. Why the
not at
revision?
all, not at
Yeah.
all. Just weird obsessiveness, I guess.
Oh really? The fifth panel just is a little darker. Just weird obsessiveness, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it like the style of the book became a little bit more cartoony if you look at the third
Oh,
panel. There's a little bit
yeah.
more lines and then I simplified it a little bit. I actually got a slightly simpler.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I don't know. This is just an example of the obsessiveness. I was just at Jim Mahfood's studio in Kansas City, and I don't know if you know his work, but it's really like graffiti inspired and really gestural. And you would think that he doesn't care at all, like he's just like splashing it out there, but he was doing that. He would redraw a page 3 times, and I would look at it, and they looked exactly the same to my eye. But he just didn't like the flick of the wrist in the line or something.
Yeah, yeah. My friend Justine is that way too. Um, wow. Okay. So we need to get through Space Dumplings and Ginseng Roots. How do you want to guide us through the story of those books?
Okay, so yeah, Habibi comes out in 2011, but that was a full 7 years after Carnet, so it felt like forever. It was a really serious project on many levels. I really so much research and like heavy dark topics and very exhausting. And so I wanted to do a palate cleanser after that, do something playful and fun and oh, also, I mean, two things happened. One of my friend's 8-year-old daughters got a hold of Habibi, and they came home, and she was reading Habibi, and that shocked and kind of disturbed me. I'm like, oh no, that's not an appropriate book for an 8-year-old. And they were like, no, it was good. Like it prompted us to have some conversations with her that we were planning to have maybe 4 years down the road. So we just had them 4 years earlier. Um,
Like, oh,
yeah, as you can imagine, about all kinds of things. And then also when I was working on Habibi, my friends' kids would come over, and I would always kind of like hide the pages before the kids showed up. Not because I didn't want their grubby hands on them, because I just knew it was not appropriate for children. So
hmm.
after Habibi, I did like, oh, I need to make something that for kids. I spent so much time making this serious adult work. It's time to do something kid friendly.
And it definitely drew from that Nickelodeon energy. You were
Yeah,
so
I
invested
think I
in
was
this.
missing that. I was probably
Yeah.
missing that because when I worked on blankets, I had the nice balance. I had half of the time was my personal project, adult work, and then half of the time was kids full color illustration work.
So how long did Space Dumplings take?
It was pretty quick. I wrote it in like 3 months. So it was a very quick, it's weird when I write those kind of books, like I can write them very quickly.
Hmm.
Like I don't know. The newest book, Ginseng Root, I probably spent 3 or 4 years writing before I started drawing. But like if it's just like a fun 3-act structure book, I wrote it in 3 months.
And by writing, you mean those thumbnails that are about yay
Okay.
big and
Yeah, they look very similar to the thumbnails for blankets. I didn't bring them though, but
uh-huh.
yeah, I was also still using the ballpoint pen method with Space Dumplings.
And how long did that take you to finish?
The whole book,
Yeah.
about 3 years.
And it was color, but you didn't color it, right?
Nope, Dave Stewart colored it, who's like one of the best colorists in the industry. And I knew that if I colored it myself, it would take at least twice as long. But I did pay Dave Stewart out of pocket.
Mhm.
And so I never made money on Space Dumplings ever because I just gave my book advance to Dave Stewart and the book never sold. So that
I
was
was
like my
afraid.
biggest, I think of that as my most commercial project, but it's the book that lost me the most money. Yeah, like a zero sum game on that one.
Oh my God.
So that was like it was 4 years total, the book, making the book and touring the book. And that was 4 years that I never made any income. So
I'm sorry, I'm writing all this down. I'm sorry, it's so funny.
I
Oh,
feel like I'm pretty bad with like the career management side of things. And I feel that stronger after coming back. I was at Heroes Con in North Carolina at Charlotte, which is mostly a mainstream show. I feel like all the mainstream folks, they really know how to manage their careers so that they make money. But I always feel like it's eluded me how to do that.
uh, how do they make money? I thought like it really is sort of luck of the draw with the mainstream. I
Yeah.
mean, with some character, there's some people who like maybe they managed to get a co-creation credit for a particular character that went to the movie screen, but most didn't and stuff like that. But
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's probably a combination of all those things. They get some entertainment licenses. They make a lot of merchandise that they sell. They sell their original art, which I don't, which is
Clearly, your diary's on the backs.
Yeah, yeah. I want to scan my diaries before I sell the art. So they're just like better at keeping the whole thing moving, and it's
Hmm.
maybe marketing their brand, I would say. That's
Hmm.
something I'd like to learn how to do.
Hmm.
Even though it sounds terrible, it sounds mercenary. It's also like, well, as cartoonists, I mean, publishers don't really help us out. We're all doing, I do all my book design and everything anyway.
That's that's been the slow realization that I think creators, but also I think publishers are even realizing is that they have less and less resources to give towards books and artists. It's like, well, we'll publish it, but they're not going to market it much, right? They'll market it for a week or two.
Yeah,
And I know when I last saw you, you said, yeah, my full-time job this year is marketing Ginseng Roots. Like,
yeah.
mar
Yeah, I've
just
been
market it.
touring for 9 months now.
Wow, that's crazy. Um, so all right, so tell us real quick about Ginseng Roots, or not quick if you want. I just would.
I have space dumplings, so just really quick look
Oh
of some
yeah,
of
oh my gosh.
yeah, this is the first page actually. And this one I did
Oh,
more at a traditional 11 by 17 format, which is what, the mainstream comics they tend to draw at this size. This one is an oversized page, that's why I just threw it in the binder separately.
uh,
So I guess I was using somewhat similar but a vibe as Habibi. Like most of the pages are 11 by 17, but there's also full play page splashes that are, oh yeah, there's another splash. So
hmm.
let me see what kind of journaling I
Wait,
can.
so the splat, are you saying you draw the splashes smaller?
No, I draw them much bigger and then I have to I just put a reproduction in here.
Oh, 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 oh.
I'm curious if like the first page has any information on it.
Or
Sometimes I don't have a lot of journaling on the first page. Oh, there's a little.
January 2013.
Oh wow, you can read that on there? Dang. Oh,
Oh, I
what
got
crazily enough on this page, I'm hanging out with the exact same people that were visiting me on that Habibi page. Um, so is the first thing I'd drawn in 2 months. I just got back from Prague and Paris. That's pretty cool. And I'd been working on rewrites. Oh yes, and I did a movie pitch. So this book started with a movie pitch too, because I had a friend working at Leica Animation in Portland who said, "Oh, Leica's looking for a sci-fi project right now, so you should pitch your comics." So before I even started drawing the final art, I did a movie pitch. It helped me, I guess, maybe
Hmm.
tighten my themes a little.
Did that go anywhere?
No, no. Um, let's see. Oh yeah, here's some panels I drew really big. Like so, I would draw uh
Wow.
it with two up for one page. Yeah. All right. So that's Space Dumplings.
And that came out in 2015.
2015, 10 years ago. Now,
And then,
now things get complicated. Now I'm like mid-career, and I feel like I've only had flops because well, Blankets was very successful, but then Habibi was, only modestly successful with a lot of blowback and criticism and death threats and all kinds of complications. And then Space Dumplings was a total disaster. So by that point, I'm like, I spent about a decade of my life not making things that sell. I would, so after Space Dumplings, I quit comics for a while to try to figure out how to make a living again, and by that time, illustration work had gone away because print publications like magazines like Nickelodeon were no longer around. So that was like a really long soul searching phase of like, well, how do I make a living making comics? I just made two books that really didn't pay off financially. And I think I took Blankets for granted at the time. I thought like, oh, once you make a big book that people
mm.
like, then you make a living. But it wasn't like that with the next couple books.
Can we take a quick digression to ask if at this point you're still making money off of blankets? At that point when you're asking about ginseng roots or starting it?
Um, yeah, no, that was Blankets. Yeah, I was still making some money off
Okay,
Blankets.
but not enough to be like everything's great.
Yeah, not enough to be like, well, I just didn't feel like I was wanted in comics. And I still
Hmm.
am struggling with that a little, but I was like, okay, nobody wanted these last two books, like how do I now I'm starting to realize that maybe nobody wants what you do in general. It's just like you luck out sometimes. Like blankets I lucked out, but overall, considering I only done 6 books, but I mean, I think blankets is the only one where I feel like I had a strong sense of like, oh, people wanted this one, or there was somehow a niche that this one fell into.
Yeah. I mean, it was a time when, I mean, there aren't that many hits that size anymore, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
it was a right place, right time too.
yeah,
Yeah, because that was right when people like graphic novels were so new at the time.
yeah.
I mean, they were old and new at the same time. I mean, Mouse came out over a decade earlier, about a decade earlier, and Frank Miller's what Dark Knight and stuff, and that was like the 1990s era of people getting excited for graphic novels. That kind of went away for a bit because there
Hmm.
weren't any graphic novels to fill the demand. But then early 2000s is when there was like books coming out and a brand new demand, including libraries and bookstores and New York book publishers. So that was like just this exciting moment in the industry. And a lot of people got good advances out of that time. They got like a good book advance, but then maybe the book didn't go anywhere and so after a year or two, like the book publishers lost interest in comics again. Unless it was YA. I mean, kids YA stuff was what started to like really get some traction.
Right.
But not my kids YA book, not at all.
Well, that was a kid's book. Do you consider blankets YA?
No. Well,
Uh-huh.
no, probably not. I mean, well, we didn't have a genre of
We
YA
did.
back
It's
then.
true. But it's
And
definitely like coming of age.
yeah, but it does like years ago, a librarian, I've heard it from many librarians. They said like if you censor 6 pages in the book, if you change them, we can have it in school libraries and you'll sell millions of copies. But I was
Oh,
I was unwilling to make the changes.
wow.
But
Wow.
if I were pitching blankets now, definitely an editor would make me make those changes and be like, "Oh, we got
Uh-huh.
to change 6 pages so that it's YA." You know.
Interesting. Wow. Okay, but let's get to Ginseng Roots. So you're trying to think, okay, how can I make a living at this thing I'm so good at and already and everyone appreciates me? Or
Oh, I didn't feel appreciated at
I,
all.
I know, I know. You were, but anyway,
It didn't feel it.
I know.
So yeah, I spent some time trying to do Hollywood stuff. I spent a lot of time in LA because I was living in LA at the time, so I was taking a lot of meetings. But I also lost a lot of steam in that world. I felt discouraged by Hollywood. And then I started and stopped a number of different books. I was actually working on a sequel for Space Dumplings because the one thing that I took home from Space Dumplings book tour is that kids want a series. They don't want to read a standalone book.
Oh,
If there's three, they'll read it. And that was told to me even beforehand by everyone, by Reina Telgemeier and Kazu Kibishi. Like they're like, you have to
mm,
do a series.
mm.
So I was like, oh, okay. If I want anybody to read the first one, I have to write two more. But when I was working on the second one, I didn't really, I was writing a script and enjoying the script, but I didn't want to draw it. And for
Uh,
a moment, I started talking to an artist that maybe I could hire an artist to draw it, but I didn't have any money to pay them mostly. And it was also like, I don't know if people would read it if it's someone else drawing it. I think people expect my work to be written and drawn by me.
mhm, mhm.
So that lost some steam. I was collaborating with this French cartoonist Edmond Baudouin. We spent a few months working on a book together, and I lost enthusiasm for that too. So I kept starting and stopping stuff, much like I did when I was young.
Mm.
It was like now
Midlife
I'm
crisis.
40, yeah, midlife crisis for sure. And then at that time I stumbled upon Ginseng Roots, which was something that had existed in my sketchbooks for almost a decade. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'm gonna get back and do that book.
Uh, Okay. I'm guessing, I don't know, but I'm guessing in this I'd like to make a living at comics thing, part of the idea of selling it as a pamphlet is part of that again. Is that right?
Yeah, that was part of it. It's like
Uh-huh.
maybe it'll be a little, that will be a way to earn some income along the way.
Did it did that work for you?
That didn't
Yeah.
work. No.
Are you okay with your publisher? You went with Tom K at
Oh,
Uncivilized.
I love Tom Kay. He's a
We all
great
love
guy,
Tom. Yep.
super talented cartoonist and and great intellectual. Um,
I
but,
know.
but no, like no, I mean it wasn't that good of experience working with small publishers again either. Trying to
Hmm.
think of who, I mean, Pantheon has been the most professional outfit I've worked with, so I have liked working with Pantheon as a whole. And they did Habibi and Ginseng Roots.
Okay, so um,
But when I started working on Ginseng Roots, my editor at Pantheon died of brain cancer, and
whoa.
then this was I was driving across the U.S. at the time. George Floyd had just been murdered. Pandemic had started, and then my editor died of cancer, and then like Pantheon went under for kind of a hot minute, like in a way that was kind of floundering. It didn't have a real anyone guiding the
Hmm.
ship, so that was an intense time. Um, but yeah, I was supposed to do that book with Ginseng Roots is supposed to be with Drawn and Quarterly, so that was fine. They wanted to do it, and I asked them if I could serialize it with them, and they said, "Well, you can serialize it, but we won't publish this series because we don't do series serialization anymore." They had just finished doing Optic Nerve, Clyde Fans, Berlin. All of those books had just seen completion as series, and they're like, "We don't want to do any more comic book series. We're
Hmm.
done with them." And so I ended up talking to some other publishers, and Tom was the guy who I felt most simpatico with, like aesthetically and intellectually. And also he was publishing my favorite stuff, like Gabrielle Bell.
Hmm.
Gabrielle Bell was doing her diary comics in that pamphlet format, and I just loved loved it. That was like my favorite version of comics.
And those booklets are really beautiful, and you made a nice, beautiful box set out of them. Um, but not a lot of money. No, okay.
No, so if I were smart, I would have done like a Patreon or something and done it,
Hmm.
self-published it, you know.
Okay. That did come up in the chat. Jim Hamilton said self-published. So
Yeah, yeah, no,
maybe.
that's another thing, I guess. Yeah, yeah, it seems like self-publishing might be the only model left that actually gives any income to the creators.
Wow, that's interesting. The only model left. I'm writing that down. Well, Ginseng Roots is beautiful, and it came out almost a year ago.
No, it just came out a couple months ago.
Oh,
The the
time.
the graphic novel
I have
did.
it. It's here.
Yeah, yeah. So that just came
Um,
out August 29th. What is
oh,
today?
oh, yeah. Um,
I'm sorry, April 29th. Yeah, so almost exactly 2 months ago.
well, definitely a couple people have asked for the same question, which is a common question, which I think is about how much do the issues in the book differ? And I've noticed changes. And so can you talk about the process of revising it for the graphic novel?
Yeah, so when I finished the 12 issue series, I finished that series like 2023, roughly June of 2023, so 2 years ago. And I sat down and read all 12 issues in succession, and I was not happy with it.
Mm,
They all worked on their own, they all stood alone, um, but they didn't feel cohesive as one book. Like there was a narrative arc that was lacking. And so I spent about a year, like from around June of 2023 until March of 2024 is the time I spent working on revising and rewriting and redrawing. And I
wow.
added 60, 70 pages of new material to the book to make.
Edits. Wow. But did you thumbnail it in the usual way that you do, which is
Well, yes, but only one chapter at a time.
oh, one shot.
Usually I think of a book holistically, but with the Ginseng Roots series, I was just worrying about one issue, one chapter at a time.
All right.
And I did
Uh,
have an outline for the book, but it was still like something was off. I didn't know what the book needed to be because I hadn't done a first draft of the whole book, you know? So I do recommend do a thumbnail of the whole book before you learn what you have to write a story about.
um, all right. Wow, Craig, thank you so much. Do you want to take some questions?
Sure. Yeah.
Do you think we covered everything? I know we rushed through
Well, I
some.
can show you some artwork really quick from
Oh my
Ginseng.
gosh, of course.
And this is another, oops, that's not, this is another 11 by 17 format. I think this is chapter 7 with Chua Vang.
And you know what? We didn't really talk about what Ginseng Roots was. Can you give us an overview while you show
Yeah.
us?
So it's a half a memoir about my first job ever when I was 10 years old. I was working 40 hours a week in the summer in ginseng agriculture. I did that for 10 years of my life. Because I was like a working class country boy, farm kid, and that's how I was able to buy comics. I was getting paid $1 an hour to work in the ginseng fields. And ginseng is, I should clarify, it's like a medicinal herb prized in Chinese medicine. But my tiny town in Wisconsin was the largest producer of cultivated American ginseng in the world when I was a kid. And this is a town of like 1,200 people. And for a couple of hundred years, they've been exporting, it's been more than that, 250 years or so, growing and exporting ginseng to China. So it was a chance for me to write about that job but also about the plant itself. I wanted to make a book about plants. And then about all the other people associated with the industry. Um, so the farmers I worked for as a kid, the big farmers now, the buyers and distributors and Chinese medicine practitioners, the scientists doing research on the plant. And this chapter focuses on Chua Vang, who's a child of a Hmong immigrant. And Hmong people were like exiled from Laos during America's war in Vietnam. And the second largest population in the Western world is in my hometown. So when I was
Well,
working in the fields as a teenager, it was all with Hmong laborers. That was the main labor force. So Chua was an amazing resource to talk about that time. Oh, and one of the things, because all of the interviews in this book are taken from audio recordings, so I interviewed people for this book is very journalistic. And so one of the things I did on the back is I would note the recordings and at what minute mark to find the dialogue.
hmm, wow.
Um, let's see if I can find another good one in here.
This is the middle of the pandemic. You're drawing this too.
Yeah, this is. I'll tell you the date on the next one I see. Well, let's see if this has the.
That was July 2020. I saw it on the back.
Wow, so clear the screen.
What
Not
you
saying
got?
anything too personal. Oh yeah, you're right. July 2020. This one's funny because it's a parody of a Marvel cover for a Marvel's Secret Wars.
Oh, wow.
For some reason, I did not write down that on the back, though. I should have written down that it's a reference to the Secret Wars cover. But yeah, I'll take questions anytime. I might pull out another one or two of these, but I
Martha asks twice about your red stamp.
oh yeah, so when I was in Taiwan, I had a stone seal carved for ginseng roots, and then I converted it into a rubber stamp. So it just says ginseng roots in old seal script. This page talks about Laos being the most bombed country in world history, and those are
Wow.
U.S. bombs, 580,000 bombing sorties. Of course, we're living in those times again.
Yeah.
I was also trying to see what's the information on the back. I was in Minneapolis at the time. Hmm, that's the journaling. But yeah, I just stamped all the original art with that seal. Um, it felt nice to have a little chop to make each page official.
Nice. Um, sure. Why don't we take like,
Um,
oh man, you keep doing that.
like I want to do questions. Let's see.
Um, Ginseng Roots has one red overlay. Did you do that personally, or is that another money loser?
No, no, no. I did that personally for
Okay.
yeah. And I was wondering if I have any of those overlays here, but I don't think I do.
Oh, you did the overlay by hand?
In the first few chapters I did, and
Uh-huh.
then I started doing it more because I would do it on a separate piece of bond paper and scan it and then composite it in Photoshop. And at a certain point, I realized how ridiculous that was. So I just started doing the second color in Photoshop.
That might be related to a question I saw in the chat from Brandon a while back. He said something about rice paper. Did you draw it on different paper sometimes?
Yeah, not rice paper, but well, actually, some of them I did do it on rice paper.
Uh-huh.
Great observation, Brandon. Some of it was vellum, some of it was bond paper, some of it was rice paper. Here's some pencils where I would pencil things on separate pieces of paper,
Uh-huh.
collage that digitally. I guess that's the Art Spiegelman way of doing it. Because I
Uh-huh.
got, like I would just draw, yeah, I would just draw panels separately on loose pieces of paper and then scan them. Yeah.
I've I've never known you to do that.
I think I just did with I actually did with Habibi a bit too.
Hmm.
But
I mean,
it's those moments where it's like I feel intimidated to work on the page, and I can just work more quickly. It's kind of cool,
um,
this little separate pieces of artwork too.
do you have any po Yeah, all right, let's take some. Are there any posts or anything about that method of working, of your method of overlaying? Do you have that? Because I know sometimes you used to make pretty
I used
informative blog posts.
to do a blog, but then that was like I keep having bad luck. Somebody like hacked my blog and they did some horrible things with it. And after that, I just lost the energy for posting anything online. So basically, what they did is they hacked my blog and they created a fake Twitter account called Craig Thompson Graphic Novelist. And they would just use everything from my blog, but then every 1 out of 10 things that they would insert on there was something really offensive. And this was up for like at least a year before somebody warned me about it. And so like, and I still see people quoting stuff from that fake Twitter account as my words, even though it was created by some imposter.
Oh my God.
So
Oh
after
Lord.
that, I felt so burned by online media, like I'm like, oh, I don't know if I should do blogs anymore.
So your old blog archive is out, is dust.
Uh, Yeah, I don't know. Some of it might still be there because then I got a website later and it has a link, but I think some of that got permanently damaged in the
Wow.
hack.
Okay, so maybe we can take some questions. I know we've tried to get to a bunch in the chat, but maybe somebody can raise a Zoom hand if they have a particular question that we didn't hit. Um, Especially if it's about,
Okay.
let's see. All right, Hattie, go ahead, Hattie.
Yeah, Craig, what's next for you? And can you do any kind of summary about you've described the difficulties and so how are you keeping yourself ready to go forward and what is forward for you? Where are you going next with your comics art?
Oh, thanks, Hattie. Good question. Well, I think I got a residency in Berlin that's coming up in 1 month, or a month and a week. And it's a 6 week residency in Berlin where I'll finally have a chance to start on something new. I don't exactly know what that is yet, but Berlin's the first chance I'll have to dedicate that time. And well, I'm still trying to figure out if I continue making comics. I feel a little more positive about it than I did, say, a year ago. A year ago, I was pretty convinced I wouldn't make any more. Um, and I still have my moments on this tour where I'm like, no, I think I'm done. I think I have to find a real job. Um, and I don't know what it is. It'll just be like something a fan says or something a reader says that gets me through the day. And I'm like, no, I'll try to make more books. Also, I feel like I was talking with my hosts here this morning because they were talking about creativity and they seem like very creative people. I'm not sure if I'm a creative person as much as I need the process to or I need the writing as a way of processing pain, I think, to be honest. So like I do start to feel more chaotic and ungrounded the longer I'm away from working.
Hmm.
So I feel like this impulse now, like I really need some time to just work, to sort out what's going on up here. Otherwise, I would be a more crazy person than I already am.
Most artists say something like that, don't they? Some variation on that.
So yeah, it is like a necessity.
Yeah. It's funny, you don't, this sounds like one of the first times you didn't have a project already in mind as you're finishing up another one.
Yes, because with
Uh-huh.
most of Ginseng Roots, I was convinced that I would stop comics after Ginseng Roots.
Oh,
It was supposed to be like a swan song to the
Oh my
media.
God.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, all right.
Yeah,
To,
sorry. I hope this is not
to be
discouraging
continued.
students, it sounds discouraging, but I also hope it's encouraging that it's always making comics is always kind of a struggle. It's part of like I talked to a young art student on tour who was kind of curious about that process in art school, and I was like, well, that never goes away, that like self-doubt and struggle and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's take Yao's question. Hi, Yao.
Hello, thank you so much, Craig. Your art pages are amazing. I was really curious about your big stack of thumbnails. I also thumbnail my book that way, and I find it hard to give people that draft to get some feedback when it's literally like loose paper. And I start to stress about like if I have to scan all these pages and put them in order, how do you get someone to look at them when they are the loose
Oh,
thumbnails in your studio?
I used to make photocopies of these. Thanks, Yao.
Hmm.
I would just go, two up. It's just a piece of printer paper, typing paper. So I did go to Kinko's back in the day and just, photocopy them and maybe make 10 sets for people.
Oh, and then you mail it to them or
Yeah,
give.
or hand them off. Yeah.
That's an amazing idea. Thank you.
Yeah. Now I probably would just scan them and then print them out on a home printer because that's probably easier and maybe, but it actually probably takes longer to scan and print at home than it would be to just go to a photocopier. But yeah, at this point I like scanning things too. I think I have scanned all of these now so that they're digitally backed up.
Oh, someday
Yeah.
to get a copy of that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yao.
Okay, let's go to Andrea and then Grayson.
Hi,
And
Andrew.
Hi. So thank you so much for like just telling us your story and your journey through these books. It just adds so much perspective. And like I don't know, 5 years maybe into my life as like a drawer and comics creator. And I have, interim and big goals around kind of the quality of my drawing and what I want my drawing to look like. Some version of like someday I'm occasionally going to make pages that are like as good as Craig's on like, Tuesday or whatever. And I'm just wondering, do you at this point have any goals just about the way your books or like anything visual you make, like the way it looks? Are there still places you're looking to reach, just like in the visual appearance of things?
Hmm.
that's a great question that I would have asked too.
That's a great question. I think Habibi's the only book that I was happy with how it physically turned out. As far as the production values and everything, like it turned out the way I intended it to look. Everything else, I feel like there's been compromises. It's like, oh, okay, it's almost there. Um, Ginseng Roots is a pretty good job too, actually. But there were a couple of things that were compromises in the very end. But is that what you're asking though about like the actual physical object and if I'm
Well, that is like that's an interesting point, but actually what was in my mind was more about like are there things that you ever like just sort of practice drawing to get your drawing kind of more towards some way that you want it to be? Are
yeah.
there ways that you'd like to evolve as a drawer?
Oh yes, for sure. Yeah, no, always, always, yeah. And it's always a matter of practice and drawing things I don't not comfortable drawing. Like it took me a long time with Habibi to figure out like all the geometric patterns and sort of the structure behind those. I had to learn perspective for Habibi. I'd never had learned perspective drawing before. I was just always eyeballing it. And then with that book, I really made a concerted effort to figure out how you do proper perspective drawings. Um, and definitely if I'm in practice, I don't feel in practice with drawing now, but if I'm drawing regularly, like every day, then the drawing gets better. Right now, I feel really rusty because it's been almost a year since I've really drawn anything.
And when
Thanks.
you're in that, like how do you feel about like, oh, level up with something and I'm producing at a different rate. Does that bother you at all?
Sure, it bothers me, but it's just I just deal with it. I missed part of what you were saying there, but because of my connection, but yeah, I'm seeing some of these questions. Yeah, it's just I always say that it takes like 3 days of drawing before anything's flowing at all, but then it's like 3 months of drawing before the drawing is any good. So I know that it's going to take me a while to get my sea legs back, after this long spell of not drawing, and I'll be writing for a while. I'll be writing for at least a year before I get to drawing too. And when I'm writing, I do try to, I'm making drawings, and I don't have my notebook, sketchbook, but I'm also doodling inside my sketchbook notebook. So there's never a time when I'm only writing words. I'm always doodling a little bit too.
Cool.
Thanks, that's really helpful.
Thanks, Andrea.
Thanks, Andrea. All right, let's go to Grayson. Maybe this will be our last one.
Okay. Honestly, you sort of covered a little bit of what I was going to ask, but yeah, I was just thinking about getting to that like sort of confidence point of like, okay, I'm going to do 10 pages, and like those 10 pages like will be done that you talked about. Like I have 10 pages too, because in my mind, like I guess I'm just wondering about like how that is navigated, like how you feel like confident to do that. Like, do you ever like get to the end of the day and you're like, I got to redo one of these pages, or um. Or do
Yeah.
you feel like one of the instructors said something like for her, she treats drawing like a performance, like she's, like you do your best in the moment and then you move on.
That's great. I love
To,
that.
yeah. And I just wondered like how that kind of works for you. Because to me that sounds like madness. Like I'm like, oh no, I can't move on. Like I have to go back and fix it, and but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Okay. Yeah, no, I save the fixing until the very end of the process. So I do, so with the thumbnails, I'm doing 10 pages a day, and I don't care at all what those look like. I just, I'm just trying to get the story. It's a vomit draft. But then with the final art, when I'm doing like 1 page a day, it's my only goal is to just do 1 page, and then the next morning I'm going to start on a new page. So I don't fuss with the page. Yeah, usually what happens actually is like 5 days a week, I'll be trying to do a page a day. And then by Saturday, I have like 4 pages that I haven't fully finished. So I have like a pickup day where I'm finishing the last of those lines and panels on a Saturday. But I'm not judging the pages too harshly because I know I have like hundreds more to go. So it's not until the final stage of the book, like those last months, when I'm kind of being more critical, like, I could redraw that face or sometimes redraw a whole page. But I save all of that until the end. And then when you see it holistically like that, you know what to prioritize. Like, because I'm never fully happy with any of it. Um, but if you've worked on it for 4 years and you have a whole stack of pages, then you can know which is like, okay, these are the glaring problems. The page that bothered me 2 years ago and is still bothering me now, that's the one I'm gonna fix. But other things that might have bothered you that day, you forget about later.
That's great. Related to that, whenever a book of yours goes out of print, I see a new edition with a brand new cover, completely redesigned, in new back matter and stuff like that. So how much of your revising of the package is motivated by displeasure with the previous version or just wanting to be celebratory?
So these days I don't do many new editions. Back in the top shelf days, they always wanted new covers for new printings because
Oh,
they figured it was like variant covers. They could sell it twice. But I was also motivated by not being happy with my existing editions. So I would like with Chunky Rice, there's like 4 or 5 different covers.
yeah.
Until finally the one I have now, I'm pretty happy with. So I just stuck with that one. And I don't see a reason to change it unless yeah, down the road there's some special edition. And then with blankets, we just did a 20th anniversary edition, but again, it was like a Hallmark. I was totally happy with my last version, but then I'm like, my Italian publisher's like, we want to do something special for your 20th anniversary, so I made a new cover for that.
Do they pay you when they're like, we want a new cover for?
No, you don't get paid. No, but yeah. No, there's no new incentive for doing that.
All right. Craig, it's so nice to see you.
It's great to see you. I'm like kind of scaling or running through some of these questions to see if there's something big I overlooked. There's so
I
many
think
here, so I don't know where to start.
I think we got most of them. Sarah says, do you use old drawings to help with marketing material? I'm not sure what that means, but I guess maybe
Um,
you don't handle the marketing exactly.
no, I don't really use them.
And
I know this isn't meant to disparage Top Shelf, but this is painting a pretty good picture for not working with them. Seems like, well, I will say that Top Shelf is a different company from when I worked there. They're now like a imprint of IDW, so they're under new ownership and they have like I think pretty traditional contracts now. So I can't speak to what they're like as a company now, because they are a different company. But this is true with all publishers. All publishers change. They're never consistent, you know. My problem is I always get attached to an editor. So at Pantheon, it was Anjali Singh for Habibi, but she was only there for like the first year of the process, and then she left to be an editor in chief at Houghton Mifflin. Then later at Pantheon, there was Lisa Lucas, who became the new president of Pantheon, and I was very attached to her. And then she also left the company, well, beginning of last year, and so that was a real heartbreak. So you can't get too attached to editors. Like when you're shopping a book and you fall in love with an editor, you can't count that they're going to be there for the whole length of the project. You know, they have their own careers to sort out and, you know, internal disputes at the company. So it's very rare for an editor to stick around for a long time at a publisher.
Yao is asking about your use of gray wash, which I forgot you did in Ginseng Roots. How do you keep that consistent? What's your process for that?
I didn't do any gray
Oh,
wash.
no?
Oh wait, I mean, okay, there is a couple of pages. So
Well,
just a
for
couple of pages
the
I tried to
sorry,
do
for the previous comics in Habibi and in Blankets, there's a beautiful ink wash
Are
that
there washes in it?
um oh yes, just for my some of my design illustrations. And like the cover of the first issue of Ginseng Roots, I also did like the back with a wash. Um I do it actually, I mean I draw it analog, but then I composite it digitally, which is not a smart way to do it.
Is it just diluted ink when you use
I do
wash?
remember I was drawing when I had some friends, the Brazilian artists Fabio Moon and Gabriel Ba in town. We did a bunch of pages together where we were watercoloring with like sepia tone ink on top of the pages, and we just did it directly on top of the inks and scanned it, and it looked really good. So I think the scanning and printing technology is good enough now that you can just watercolor directly on your page. Um, I would personally, I scan the black and white first just in case I mess up. I still have a backup of that artwork.
Jason's asked a couple times about underground comics from the 60s. Were you influenced by any of them?
Not that I can think of, not specific. I mean, I admire them, but I wasn't really, I haven't paid too close of attention or was influenced. And when you say underground, I assume that's like Crumb, Spain Rodriguez, and
Yeah.
all those folks. Um, when I was at your house recently, Tom, I was just rereading Trina Robbins' Twisted Sister anthology, which really holds up. It's really good.
Well, Trina wasn't Twisted Sister. She was women's comics, and
Oh, sorry, Twisted Sisters. Who? It's Mary Fleener. Who
she
did
was
that?
she did part of that. Aileen was a part of that as well.
Diane Newman.
Yeah. Diane Newman
Okay.
especially.
It's funny because now that we mentioned all those women cartoonists from the underground, I was probably more influenced by all of them, Carol
Mm.
Tyler and Trina and Mary Fleener, more than the male equivalents of those artists.
Yeah.
Of course, I respect them all. It's just like I didn't pay too close of attention. I was more influenced by indie comics of the 90s. So, Hernandez Brothers, Dan Klaus, Julie Doucet, Chester Brown, that kind of work.
You're gonna try and make it you're gonna try and make it to the Carol Tyler exhibit
Where
in
is that? I would love to see that.
it's at the Billy Ireland
Oh,
coming up soon. I really want to see it, but I don't know if I'm gonna make it.
okay.
She's
I
wonderful
might be in Europe
inspiration.
for my residency by that time, I would love to see that. I love Carol Tyler.
I'll have to bring it to Berlin. All right. Craig, thank you so much.
Oh,
And
my pleasure. Thank
I
you.
hope you get a nice rest if that's what you're doing in Minneapolis. I don't know what you're doing right now. You have book tour stops right now?
In a few days, I'm going to start resting. Next week I'm going to Chicago, see Chris Ware. We're going to do an architectural tour. That sounds fun. And I might see some cartoonist friends along the way too. But yeah, this whole next week I'm going to take a week off. And then I won't really have time off until I get to Europe, which is in 5 weeks.
Wow. What a life. I want to talk to you more about this whole like.
Yeah, I don't recommend not having a home. Like I miss having a home, and I think I think I'm a lot like this cat right here.
In spirit, you're like this cat, but you're
Look at that.
forced to roam the globe. Selling
Yeah,
your book.
but to like be productive and sort of really fully comfortable, I think I need a space of my own again. So eventually I want to figure that out.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to like get grounded and get have anything like start sticking if I'm not like in one place for a time, and maybe even bored. I need to get bored for a bit so I can start making something new.
Okay. Well, we'll check in with you in a few months after your Berlin residency and see if things are moving again, see how
All
you're
right.
feeling, and see if comics are coming out again.
That'd be great.
I'm going to ask everybody to give you a round of applause. Craig, it's so nice to see you, and thanks so much for all your just wonderful comics and everything. Thanks for being
Thank
here.
you, Craig.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Thank you. This is
Appreciate
great.
it.
Really enjoyed
Be
it.
well.
Thank you.
Craig, thanks. Bye, everybody. Thank you for being here.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Keep working.
Thanks for joining us. This has been a production of the Sequential Artists Workshop, or SAW. You can find us on social media at Comics Workshop and online at sawcomics.org. You can hear about our many courses at learn.sawcomics.org. SAW is a nonprofit and supported by people like you. Learn how to make a tax-deductible donation at the donate page of sawcomics.org. You can join our free community of comics explorers at members.sawcomics.org. Thanks so much for being here.